If these ideas are attached to the end of your strategy phase, which we don't call strategy, then for the client, it's actually not a strategy phase at all. It's an ideas phase, right? You shared a bunch of insights, and now you're sharing some ideas that are directly based on the learnings. Then the client says, yes, I'm in. Welcome to Design Bigger, the podcast for designers and studios ready to think bigger, design bigger brands, and land bigger projects. I'm Nika Warland, an ex-big agency brand strategy director who took her blue chip client expertise and built a freelance career helping independent agencies around the globe. This is the podcast where I share the tricks of the trade for lean design thinking to set you up as a world-class creative talent. As a translator between business and creatives, I'll show you how to speak client, hack top agency frameworks, and think like the best studios out there. If you're ready to design bigger, hit subscribe and let's get started. Hello, designers. It's your host, Nika here. It is a beautiful, sunny spring day in Seattle. I came back from a week away and I'm quickly recording this because I want to give you a very practical how-to episode that you can implement in your design work today. So we are going to be talking about how to price strategy in a way that makes clients say yes, how to calculate it, how long it usually takes, how to communicate the value of this important step to clients who usually don't know what strategy is, and then how to deliver the work in time. So I'm going to say I actually have a guide that takes you step by step through this process. So if you want to know exactly how to phrase things, you can go to my website. I'm also going to add a link in the show notes, and you can download this PDF. It's pretty short. You can literally copy paste the text from the PDF into your proposal and off you go. Now, what I want to start with is actually how hard it is for designers right now. On one hand, you have Fivers and Canvas where clients can go and get fairly decent designs for, businesses where design is not as crucial. They can do it themselves. They can do it quickly. And when clients see how simple and affordable design can be, they start questioning your value and your pricing. On another hand, you have AI that now can create for $20 a month something not as good as you would create, but it can generate identity, graphic design, posters, packaging ideas that the clients can use. That also drives the perception of your work down. And then I just recently read somewhere, I'll dig it out and I'll put the link in the show notes, that 40% of clients in 2025 aren't willing to pay for creative pitch. This means that if you are bidding against another agency or designer, the chances are your client doesn't even want to pay for your first round of creative work, which is so hard. Plus, there are conversations about the looming recession right now, and I can feel that even on my roster of agencies, there is a pullback on bigger projects. And I actually believe that strategic skills is something that can separate you from Canvas and Fivers and AI generated designs and actually can allow you to pitch faster. So you're probably thinking, Nika, yes, it is hard to be a designer right now. And you're not a designer, you're a strategist. So how do you even know that this is going to be helpful? I'll tell you a story. So as you might know, I used to work in London on big global Fortune 500 brands, companies like Unilever, Diageo, PepsiCo. And then I moved to Seattle, where my husband is from, and I thought that it would be so easy to find a job. And I learned the hard way that clients over here, as well as agencies, didn't need the brand strategy process that I have been taught and didn't buy strategy in truckloads. So actually, in order to survive, I started selling myself as a designer. And I can design, I'm a very average designer who knows her way around Adobe, InDesign, Photoshop, and all of that. Figma, I don't think was around back then. And as I said, I'm a better strategist. I'm a designer, but the times were hard and I went out and I pitched my design skills to some local businesses and actually found this pool of realtors who used to work for big real estate firms but wanted to go on their own and needed identity to literally go on their business cards, for sale signs, sold signs, websites. And you know what I did? I actually pitched strategy to them in a way that made them say yes. They didn't know what strategy was. They didn't know how it can benefit them. And 50% of the project was pure strategy. And then the second half was actually design. And it was a pretty basic design job, if you think about it. You know, a real estate agent who's going on their own really just needs pretty much what I just told you: a business card, a for sale and sold signs, basic identity to go on their website, Facebook. That's about it. But even then, you know, I haven't opened in design until the third meeting with the client. And they were happy. Like, one client literally cried in a meeting because she said that I could really understand her and she felt seen because of that process, because of the work I put in the first half of the project, which was strategy. And this is not to brag that, you know, my design skills were great. The design was actually pretty simple. It was literally the strategy that got me such great feedback. So the reason why I told you this story is to illustrate how even the smallest brand, like a realtor who doesn't understand strategy, can really benefit from it. The value of strategy is immense, and people buy it as long as you don't sell it as brand strategy. If I went on and said, hey, 50% of the work I'll be doing will actually be strategy and you're not going to see design until the third presentation, they would be like, what? No, thank you. But I actually went and I positioned it as, we're going to look at your competition and we're going to find out how to stand out in the market. And then I'm going to show you some ideas. We will work on it together and you can feedback and it will be very collaborative. I'm not going to go away for a month, design 3 options, and then come back with a solution for you that you have to love. So they really loved this collaborative approach. They loved being involved from the very beginning. And actually, I developed really good relationships with them. They felt so much more relaxed, giving feedback on a mood board or just some references that I quickly found online. You know, I obviously underpresented and over-delivered the stage of work, but for them, it felt very easy and engaging. It's so much harder for the client to feedback on the finished design because they understand that you have poured your blood, sweat, and tears in it. So actually, the first couple of meetings literally felt like, you know, it was just 2 friends sitting down, discussing some ideas. I usually keep it very open. You know, if they don't like something, I just delete it on a page right away. If they show me something that they like, I add it right away. It just feels very fluid and open. And then by the end of this meeting, boom, I have a direction. I have a feel for the aesthetic or the idea that they really gravitate towards. And from that, I can go and start designing within that outlined brief. I also, as a strategist, love delivering design with a tagline and a brand idea attached. Technically, it is strategy or technically it is copywriting, but I don't split it for the client. For all they know is they're just looking at their new brand. And it really helps sell the design because they can see why I'm doing it. They see that I've heard them because I pull some phrases and words that they've used with me in the meeting when we were just chatting. And then I would literally present 3 design concepts. They would pick one. I'll do minor tweaks to it, and that's it. The next stage is I'm delivering the logo kit and the marketing kit. So that is 2 strategy presentations and 2 design presentations. And that is just to show you how simple and basic strategy can be. Doesn't have to be scary, doesn't have to be big. And if you deliver design vision by the end of that phase, then for what you know, you're just doing design. Now, I didn't stay on this career path, didn't want to be a designer, but this experience taught me a very important lesson of actually how important strategy is and that you can still sell it to a person who doesn't understand what it is. So if your clients don't want to buy strategy and local entrepreneurs don't understand what it is, and you haven't been taught strategy in art school, you can still sell it. You can still do it, and it can be very helpful. Strategy is just thinking through all of the possibilities and details before you open your design software. That's it. So how do we add this important step to the proposal in a way that makes the client say yes? The key point is to not use the words brand strategy, okay? Seems counterintuitive, but think about it. The second you don't call it brand strategy, your imposter syndrome goes out of the door, right? Because what you're delivering is actually a creative direction. So let's call it that. Let's not call it vague discovery phase. Sounds kind of pompous and expensive. Clients don't understand brand strategy is. They don't know what discovery phase is. Those who say that they do and didn't have a big brand experience, didn't work at a big marketing department, probably don't have the full picture. I have talked to so many designers who are friends of mine who say, Nika, I have tried adding brand strategy to the proposal and the client asks to take it out. And when I ask, well, why did they do that? The answers are usually, hey, well, they said they already know all of this information. But then when the designer asks for this information, there's very rarely substance to it. If I could get $1 every time my client says, even big client, that they understand their competition when they didn't understand their competition, I would be a billionaire. Clients often think that their competition is their direct competition. But as we all know, consumers don't think in categories. So even if the client says that they have given you a brief and you don't need to do anything else because they can provide you with all of the category or consumer insights, the chances are that's not the full picture. So even though they think they gave you the brief, it is your job to define the brief. And so I really like to define the first stage of work as brief definition. And the chances are, that you have sent them a questionnaire that asks the basic questions, and they have given you some information that lays the foundation of a brief. But there's so much more to it. And if you call the first stage of work brand strategy, and you start telling them that it is about auditing the competition and learning about the consumer, they will think that they're paying you to get up to speed with the information that they already know, right? They're the specialists and they know who they are against, right? And they know their competition. So instead, you need to talk about the value you're going to deliver. So you say, we're going to find a gap in your category that we can own. We can understand the customer or consumer occasion, and we'll need to identify the aesthetic that appeals to this particular consumer. We will likely find case studies of brands in other categories that we can learn from, brands that have faced the similar challenges to yours, and we're going to share the learnings with you and how we're going to utilize them. 99% of your clients can't afford a mental report that talks about their category and who is winning at it and who's losing at it and the trends. Everybody dreams about one. Not many can afford them. I have been working with big brands that can afford them. Recently I worked for a big European brand that just entered Whole Foods in America, and they couldn't afford it. They wanted me to go and find parallel case studies that would prove that their strategy will work. I was working for a private equity firm who were developing a portfolio of brands and wanted to really challenge the market, and they could have totally afford it, but they didn't want to buy those reports. So finding parallels in other categories is the number one way to create a strategy when you don't have an Ernst & Young report. You can look at articles for specific industries online, and then you can piece it together. And nothing gives client better peace of mind than knowing that there is a brand in a different category that faces a similar challenge, that targets a similar consumer, and see how they have tackled it. See what they did with their messaging, see what they did with their design. So I actually was working for a product that appears on a charcuterie board, and it was a very specific niche product, and there was no available information for this category. So what I did is I actually looked at olive oil, wine, and I looked at coffee. I looked at other kind of craft products that people use as status symbols to communicate their connoisseurship. And then we have extracted learnings for this client, and we have mimicked the strategy that those brands have done in terms of the design and messaging, and it really worked. So this kind of information, the client wouldn't give it to you in their questionnaire. They wouldn't get there. So you write the first stage of your proposal as brief definition. You remove the language that sounds like research, audit, strategy, and instead you're using the language of finding insights, delivering learnings, dissecting case studies. See the difference? It's all about how you are going to deliver value. And then you're saying, well, I'm actually going to give you these back of the napkin ideas. They're not going to be designed. It's literally kind of just like quick and dirty. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them. These are going to be like rough mood boards. I have literally, with those real estate clients, just put together Pinterest boards. I didn't even design them. And if these ideas are attached to the end of your strategy phase, which we don't call strategy, then for the client, it's actually not a strategy phase at all. It's an ideas phase, right? You shared a bunch of insights and now you're sharing some ideas that are directly based on the learnings. Then the client says, yes, I'm in. I'm going to pay for that. That makes total sense. And so now when you know how to add strategy to your proposal, it's important to understand how to price it. So I worked with a range of different clients and they all have different comfort zones when it comes to pricing. I worked with PepsiCo, and PepsiCo is famous for dissecting your proposal. They want a full quote and they would go through it and then they would say, can you please cut down the number of hours here? Can you please cut down the number of hours there? So after having this experience, I am very due diligent about my quote. I make sure that I go and I put the exact number of hours for each activity that I do. So say category research is going to be half a day, and then consumer research is going to be half a day, and then looking at case studies and finding market data information is going to be half a day, and then putting the presentation together and actually presenting it to the client, which is going to take like about an hour and a half. So overall, I'm going to spend 2 days doing this. Now, you may use value pricing, so you don't have to tell the client exactly all of this information. You might then say, okay, 2 days, but the value I'm delivering is much more. So actually, I'm going to spend 2 days, but I'm going to not just multiply it by my hourly rates. I'm going to bump it to a certain number that you're comfortable with. Now, it's also important to mention, I was asked this question at my last training, is even if that takes you 2-3 days to develop the brief and the initial ideas, it doesn't mean that this is your timeline. So let's say if you start on the 1st of April and you do 2 days on strategy, it doesn't mean that you present on the 3rd of April, right? Don't put yourself in these limiting time frames. All the client needs to know is that the 1st week of April, we're going to be doing brief definition. The 2nd week of April, we're going to present, get your feedback. The 3rd week of April, we're going to start design work. Right? But be prepared for a client who wants to know where the money is going to. So I really love being due diligent about my deliverables and knowing exactly how much time goes where. It helps me if the client wants to add a deliverable and I then go and I can show them the breakdown of all of the work and I can say, hey, this is out of scope. I'm happy to throw in a couple hours of exploration, but this is going to be extra. The number of times the clients then realize it's not necessary is almost 100%. So be due diligent. But another important point I want to make is that, right now I'm saying, hey, like this should take 2 days. Obviously, this may take you longer. At this point in my career, I'm quite fast. And actually, it has been a problem for me because very often agencies come to me after they have spent 5 days with a different freelancer who didn't deliver. And then they come to me saying, hey, the pitch is in 2 days. Can you please crack it in 2 days? And I do, but then I get paid for only 2 days and they get paid for 5 days of bad work. In that situation, you can increase your daily rate or you can use the value pricing, but it might take you longer. It's okay, right? You're also learning a new skill. So give yourself a little bit of space. Yeah. Roughly, I would say the brief definition stage takes me 2 days. It may take you 3 to 4 days. But if by the end of those days, you deliver a direction that saves the client time down the line, then they are willing to pay for it. So if you have an imposter syndrome, thinking, well, but I'm a designer, I'm not a strategist, I don't know how to do strategy, I think this approach really frees you up, because technically you're not doing brand strategy. It is not called brand strategy on the proposal. It is really thinking before doing. And by the end of this phase, you're delivering design directions. So I hope that gets you excited and puts you at ease. So for all client knows, you're doing design, right? It's a design process. So I really hope this helps you. If you want to know exactly how to phrase things and you just want copy paste things into your proposal, go to my website. The link is in the show notes, and download my free guide. If you have any questions, DM me on Instagram at Nika Warland, or on LinkedIn. I'm Nika Warland there as well. And once you have sold this process, if you feel like you need to refresh the basics of brand strategy and really understand how to deliver this process within those 2 to 4 days, I have an upcoming webinar that literally goes through just those first 3 presentations, right? From the discovery phase to the brief definition presentation to the brand positioning. So that's it for today. If you're listening to this podcast, it means that you're on the right track. 2025, it's going to be really hard for designers who aren't strategic. So add strategic to your LinkedIn profile and your website. Read a couple of books, upskill on brand strategy basics with my webinar, and you'll be good to go. Until next week, go design something big and beautiful. And remember, the best designers are always strategic.